We all use PowerPoint, but how do you choose the right fonts, colors, and imagery to elevate your brand and your themes? And how do you elevate it to an art form and then tell compelling stories with your presentations? Well, today I'm going to be joined by Illiya Vjestica as we talk all about PowerPoint presentations to pop your presentations. PowerPoint tips to pop your presentations. So join me as we chat with Illiya. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Creator Tips, Tools, and Tales show. Every other week, I come to you live and feature a variety of content creators to share with you their tips, tools, and tales. So thank you for joining us. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're tuning in from. I so appreciate the time that you spend here. And we always try to give back to you as the community and the audience and bring all kinds of tips, tools, and tales and advice for you all. So now I want to get to the content tip of the week as I share with you a content tip to help you build your brand as well as your entrepreneurial journey. So for me this week, I thought I'd share with you something based on how I've scaled my business. As my business has grown, and I'm super thankful for the business and growth that I've had this year, I really want to kind of share with you some of the lessons that I've learned in order to scale a business. And these are just things that I've learned, and I thought I'd share with you guys. So, this week's content tip of the week, or tip of the week, is hire to scale. What I've realized over time is I just can't do everything myself. I'm stubborn and I always feel like I can do it all myself, and it just doesn't work. And that's what I've realized as I've grown as an entrepreneur. So I thought I'd share with you kind of like three lessons I've learned when it comes to scaling a business and the hiring side of it. Number one is to hire for your weaknesses or things that you don't like to do, right? I've realized over time that whatever your weaknesses are or your dislikes, instead of trying to fix them, hire for them instead, right? And that way you get to concentrate and double down on your strengths instead of working yourself, to death on your weaknesses or trying to fix it. So for me, for a long time, I didn't think that I was very good at long form content. I can do videos and posts and all that, but I just don't really like writing long articles and blogs. And so over time, I've hired a variety of writers to help with writing long form content, both for myself as well as my clients. So think about that. What is your weakness or dislikes? And then hire for that. A second lesson I've learned is to hire to save time. Whatever tasks you have that are repetitive or administrative or things that take you away from the strategic work that you do or the coaching work or the business and consulting work that you do, hire to save time. And one of the best hires that I've had this year is my own marketing analyst, Rebecca Pulford. She's been invaluable to me and just has been able to save me so much time in helping with content and scheduling and research, especially research. So huge kudos to you out there, Rebecca. But for those of you out there, hire to save time. And finally, this tip leads to my guests. Hire for unique expertise. We don't have to learn everything. And if we admire something about somebody, or if we see beautiful work from somebody, or very useful, valuable work from somebody, hire for their expertise. So for me, sometimes I just love beautiful graphics, and I just can't do it. I get up to a certain point, and that's it. And even for me, I've used PowerPoint for 20 years now, 20 years. And I thought I knew this software. But you know what? My guest takes it to an art form. And so when I stumbled upon his post one day and saw the amazing graphics and fonts, and I realized he was a PowerPoint designer, I was like, you know what? I think my PowerPoints need a refresh. And I was getting ready for a keynote presentation. And I thought, you know what? I bet he could help me and make it look amazing. And that began our amazing working relationship. And now he's a guest today. And so that final tip is hire for those unique expertise. You don't have to learn it all yourself because they've had decades of experience themselves. So hire an expert. So there you go. Hire for your weakness, hire to save time, and hire for unique expertise. And that will help you scale your business and take it to the next level. Okay, let's get to the good stuff. I want you all to join me in welcoming my guest, Illiya Vjestica, PowerPoint presentation designer, super extraordinaire art forms. Welcome, Illiya. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Fanny, and thank you for the very gracious and beautiful intro. Thank you very much. Very humbled by kind words.
Absolutely. I want to read to people your bio real quick.
Yeah, sure.
Illiya is the founder of the Presentation Designer and has over a decade of experience helping presenters with their PowerPoint presentations. From the TED stage, so he's done presentations for TED speakers to speakers across the globe. Illiya's work helps thought leaders connect their message and story into beautiful visuals. And it's his mission to inspire positive change in the world by creating meaningful conversations. I love that, Illiya.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And hello, everyone, and shout out to a few people. Hello, Mary. Hello, Wolf, Nia, and Alexander, and Andy. Hi, everyone. Hope you're doing well.
We have a lot of future pro group people here also in the audience. I love it. So let's get straight into it before we chat through your history. And for those of you in the comments, how many of you, on a scale of, let's say, 1 to 10, how would you rate your PowerPoint skills? Okay, so those of you in the comments, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your PowerPoint skills? Okay, let us know in the comments there. And in the meantime, Illiya, you and I were talking about some common mistakes that you see people make in presentations. What would those be?
I mean, there's a few. I mean, the first one I would say is not respecting the real estate, because if you think about a PowerPoint slide, you've got a certain amount of content and you have, the size of the PowerPoint slide to use. So a lot of times people will put in, they'll put in text, they'll put in too much text, they'll put in lots of bullet points, they'll put in their company logo, they'll put in, multiple images. And when it looks crammed on the slide, it's hard for the audience to understand. Mm-hmm. So this is a key thing to remember, that you need to keep the content clean and keep the slide as simple as possible.
Absolutely. What else would be another mistake that you've seen that people have made, Illiya?
Another mistake would be to not use contrast in the slides. So if you've got a differentiation between the background, so say if you're using a light background on a light background, a light text, it makes it hard for the audience to read and understand. And also it's important to remember that you want your text to stand out and make it clear for the audience to read. So dark backgrounds work really well. And you also want to make sure that your fonts are nice and clear, and you're not using a color that's too close to your background to make it hard for people to understand.
Got it. Got it. And you have a tip around imagery too, right? Mistakes around imagery.
Yeah, I mean, with imagery, again, you want to make sure that it looks relatable to your audience, and you don't want to use anything too cliche. We've all seen the traditional stock that's featured on stock websites where maybe it's a cheesy businessman in a suit, or somebody shaking hands. We can all tell what those images look like, and they just help to make your presentation look less professional. And I believe that imagery can evoke powerful emotions in the audience and help people to connect with your story. So you want to keep that fun and exciting for your audience as well, and try to stay away from the traditional stock that we all see on the stock websites.
Yeah. And I want to show people, just to illustrate that point, like I want to share with people one of your presentations here, Save the Bees. Guys, check this out,
Yeah.
right? Just so that you can kind of see some of Illiya's imagery and fonts. Walk us through kind of like how you came up with this presentation and
Yeah.
some of the
So
key points in there.
So I wanted to do a presentation about why the bees are, why it's important that we have bees in the world. And, we can't really live without the honeybee, as it's responsible for a large percentage of crops that we eat. And so what I wanted to do is paint a story using the humble honeybee. I use different imagery of the bees and cut them out and put them onto the background to add clarity to the message and help the audience connect to the points and story that I was talking about. And again, it's thinking about the messaging and thinking what you're trying to convey to the audience, trying to get the images to relate to that.
Oh, it's gorgeous. It's so beautifully laid out. What do you think, folks in the audience? I saw a whole variety of numbers popping through, from like 3 to 7 in terms of PowerPoint skills here. But yes, this is just some of the samples of just amazing imagery and PowerPoints. To your point, like that kind of contrast of like light and dark, right?
Yeah, so
Having
this
that
this
pop.
slide's a good example. So you can see that the text stands out because the background's dark, but also you've got the image there to add interest to the slide and get the audience to take note of what's on the slide, and obviously to support what the speaker would be presenting. And then again, we'll talk about it in the a bit later with fonts, but just by using a different font family to highlight, or color to highlight, the key piece of information that you want to get across.
Absolutely. Real quick, Illiya, how did you even get into the world of PowerPoint and designing? Where did that come from?
I mean, it's an interesting one, really, because it started for me quite a few years ago when I was at university. And while I was at university, I saw my lecturer present some PowerPoints, and the lecturer himself was quite engaging, and it was an accountancy lecture of all things. So it just shows you might study something at university, doesn't mean that's always your defined path. So I was doing accountancy to begin with. And anyway, he was presenting his slides, and I noticed that the slides were just, really, really difficult to understand. There was like bullet point after bullet point. Some of the color choices, like I remember once seeing one deck where it was a navy blue background with the text, and it's very difficult for anyone with even 20/20 vision to see that at a distance. And I just thought to myself, here we are spending lots of money on education, and how are students expected to learn when the PowerPoint slides are just so traditional and so boring? And I thought to myself, there must be a better way to do this. And while I was at university, I started to research and look into PowerPoint design. And I came across a chap called Gar Reynolds, and Gar wrote a book called Presentation Zen, and I recommend checking it out. It's a brilliant book. And I thought, oh, wow, there's a world into presentations. And it wasn't until many years later, after my career in marketing, that I ended up speaking at an event, and a couple of friends of mine noticed how good my deck was, and they said, you should do this as a job. And that's how I got into doing presentation design.
There you go. Doubling down on your strengths.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
Yes, yes. Go with what you are naturally good at. Well, then let's get straight to it because I see tons of questions. So we'll get to those. But one of the first topics we want to talk about is fonts, right?
Yeah.
Like one of the big things in presentations is fonts.
Mm.
So walk us through a bit like your tips on how you choose a great font.
Yeah, so I mean, the first thing would be to think about choosing a font that's easy to read. So you know, it's thinking about whether you're going to use sans serif or serif, or you're going to use a formal font or a non-formal font. So again, you've got to think about what your audience, who they are, what kind of presentation you're doing. That maybe you're doing an informative presentation, so the font should maybe be clean and professional. Or if you're doing something that's a bit more fun and engaging, maybe pick a font that relates to that, so that your audience can see that the fonts kind of mirror the style of the presentation and topic that you're giving.
Awesome. Awesome. And then how do you kind of make sure because it's also about our brand, right?
Yeah.
Like fonts speak to our brand too, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's also, again, choosing a font that kind of relates to your brand and personality. So I would stick to maybe one font or a choice of two that work well together. A lot of
Mhm.
people make this mistake of using too many fonts in their presentation, and this can make your deck seem less cohesive and have a less consistent feel to it. And also, you want to maybe stay away from fancy and decorative fonts. So
Mm.
make sure that you can see the font when you stand back from the display. So one of my key tips is, if you design your slide, stand back from your laptop or your desktop and walk back a bit. And
Ah,
if you can still see the text and read the point clearly, then you know
yes.
you've got a good slide. But if you're struggling to read it, maybe it's in italic or the font's just too curly or decorative, then maybe think about changing the font and choosing something a bit more rounded or clear.
I want to share with people real quick. One of the reasons that, and let us know in the comments below your questions around fonts. How are you currently choosing your fonts? And then any kind of suggestions or questions you have for Illiya when it comes to fonts. But one of the first posts that I saw you do, and this was how I kind of like got into your world, Illiya, was a carousel you did. Um, and I'm just going to share it real quick about the book Pop, right? It's a book
Yeah.
by Sam Horn, and you went like viral with this carousel, right? Like over 485 reactions. I don't know how many views that ended up with, but I I still remember when I first saw this, I was like, I love the cleanness of it. And like, how did you even like pop, right? Like even
Yeah.
just the word itself becomes the imagery, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I was taking Sam Horn's lead on this. I mean, it's punchy. I think it's pop is punchy, original, and pithy.
Yeah.
So, or popular, pithy, original, pithy. So yeah, it was just thinking when I was designing this, it's just making each slide as impactful and hard hitting as possible. So, what are you trying to get across to the audience? What do they need to understand from your slide? And can they summarize it in like less than 30 seconds? For example, can
Brevity,
they look at
right?
that slide and
Right
say,
there.
yeah, success from brevity, keep it short, keep it simple, keep it straight to the point.
I love it. So there you go, folks. Even that, right? Like there's something just for me, I love fonts. There's just something beautiful about lettering. Long time ago, I used to do calligraphy, like back in the day. But yeah, just this here for me, that's beautiful. The words just speak for itself, and then the font speaks for itself. Now you have some sites that you feel that can help us, right? In
Yeah.
terms of choosing fonts. What are
Yeah,
they?
so I mean, you may have heard of some of these before, but some you may not have. But obviously, Google Fonts is one of my favorites to go on, and I recommend going to the most popular tab or what's trending, and just having a look at some of the fonts on there. If you do look on Google, lots of people have done posts on different font combinations that you could use from Google Fonts. My favorites happen to be Roboto and Montserrat. They're two of my favorites. I also like Open Sans as well, so have a look at those. There's also FontShare, which is by an Indian type foundry, and they actually have font pairings on there that are free to use that you can have a look at. So they've done the work for you and selected fonts that go well together for legibility and readability, so have a look at that. And then the last one is type.io. And what type.io is basically it takes website screenshots and looks at the typography of websites. And a lot of the fonts on there are premium fonts or require a license or subscription. But when you're buying a pro font, you can really elevate your deck to the next level. Obviously, it does cost a bit of money to buy the licenses, but have a look at some of the font combinations on there and see which ones you like, and maybe try that out in your slide deck.
Yeah. Well, there you go, folks. That is, Anne is going to help us post some of those links, and you'll see some of those links there after the show. But that's fonts.google.com, fontshare.com, and then type.io/samples. I want to show people, and this is one of the things that Illiya has helped with my brand as well, some of the fonts that we've chosen for my presentations and my new brand, which will all be revealed next year. But this is all the teasers here. Walk us through when you helped me to pick some of these fonts, Illiya.
Yeah, I mean, I think with fonts, it's a key of trial and error. Like you've got to have a go and see what works. Again, think about your audience. So when we were doing this presentation together, I was thinking about, well, we're talking about live streaming, and we're talking to an audience who's involved in tech and use software a lot. But also we wanted to make it try mirror the presenter's personality. So obviously in Fanny's case, Fanny's very bubbly and warm, and so we wanted to look at like a more of a rounded font, which is a bit more friendly than something that's a bit more straight and narrow. So again, you can pick the font to the personality of the person. I think we could probably all be a specific type of font. I don't know which one mine would be, but
yes.
maybe Futura or something like that.
Yes. For a long time, I liked Babus. Oh, I can never pronounce it.
New. Yeah,
Babus
that's a
Nude.
popular one.
Yes, yes. Let us know in the comments, folks, what is your favorite font? What font do you think speaks to your personality and your brand? And if you're not sure, check out those links that we're posting in the comments there, and check it out. Find one that suits your personality. Okay, so we have fonts now. What about color? Like, I love color. So
Yeah.
tell us your tips around choosing color.
So color is probably the hardest thing, I think, for picking a presentation design when you're designing a deck or doing slides. And the thing again with color is just to experiment, is just to have fun. Obviously, when you load up PowerPoint, Office has the default color scheme, which I think is green, yellow, blue. And at most times when I look at somebody's deck, it's using the default color scheme. And you can set up your own color theme in PowerPoint by editing the master slides, and then in themes, you can create your own color scheme in there, and then it changes the color swatch in PowerPoint, so you can choose your own colors. And obviously there's lots of amazing places that you can go to find color schemes that are already out there. But the first thing I would think is choosing a theme for your presentation. So maybe you're going with an ocean theme. So maybe you want to choose like oceanic colors, things to create a kind of a mindful and calming atmosphere. The second tip would be to use color psychology. So each different color has a specific idea in terms of what it represents, what emotions it can invoke. So think about the color blue. It's often used for trust. It can create calm and tranquility because it being the color of the ocean. So you might think about blue, or, you know, for example, green is about revitalization, energy, growth, freshness. Maybe you're doing a presentation on sustainability, so maybe green is a good fit for your audience. And again, thinking about the colors that speak to you. So just a thought that when me and Fanny were working together, I noticed in Fanny's office in the background, she had a lot of purple objects and pink objects. And I said to you, what does the color purple mean to you? Is a color that resonates with you personally? So if there's a color that you particularly like for example, my brand, I love navy blue because all my shirts are navy blue. It's one of my favorite colors. So it helps me to feel confident about what I'm doing because I relate to that color. So you don't always have to use your brand colors if you're presenting individually. Maybe choose colors that you connect with, and you feel that it can evoke an emotion in the audience.
Yeah. And I still, well, just to show you guys, like, just kind of the transformation that can happen when it comes to colors. So I think you all have kind of, those that tune in regularly for my show know that, you know, I had a big orange kind of theme with grays and whites and blacks. And that was kind of, it was fine for years, but I really wanted to kind of elevate it, and I was stuck. And so this is kind of like my existing color scheme. And if you remember my background, it used to be this here, right? Remember this? And so now, using the new color scheme that Illiya has kind of recommended, it's such a big transformation, I feel, when you go from like one color scheme, and then he took it and like just kind of still incorporated the orange, but then like jazzed it up with my other favorite colors, and purple and pink, and then it transformed to this. What do you guys think? Tell us the thought process behind that.
Yeah, so I mean, this is obviously from a design perspective, but when you're working with an existing brand or existing brand colors, sometimes you don't want to revolutionize it, change it too completely, because it can be too jarring from what it was before. So in your case, I looked at the color orange. Orange is quite an uplifting and powerful color. It's quite energetic. And obviously that's how I see you as a presenter. We talked about that in terms of your own personality as a presenter. And then we got to the idea of incorporating the purple from obviously being one of your favorite colors, and then a kind of a pinkish hue as well, just to offset the orange. Because again, with color, you've got to be careful. Like if you use too much of one color, it can be a bit overpowering. For example, red and black is a really, really good color combination. But if you use too much red in your presentation, you can give the audience a feeling of danger and, you know, sense of warning. So again, you've got to be sparing with overusing one particular color and having contrast on different shades between the primary colors. But again, looking in nature, looking at colors that complement each other and that you can see in everyday life. We know many classics like yellow and black, red and black, white and red. It's just thinking about keeping it simple and not confusing the audience with too many colors, but choosing ones that are complementary to your tone and the story and message that you're trying to get across to the audience.
I love it. And there's a website you were sharing about color dash. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I've been using this website for 10 years now. All it does for you is
write it down, folks.
It just gives you an idea of what each color means. So it'll tell you about what red means, what purple means, and just think about those words. Do they connect with your story? Do they connect with your personal brand and the audience? For example, if you were doing a presentation on climate change and you were trying to give a sense of urgency, maybe picking a color that creates that, or maybe you're doing a presentation on mindfulness and mental health, so you want to invoke a calming and peaceful atmosphere, then maybe choosing colors that represent that theme and that topic that you're going to be talking about.
Awesome. What are some of your other websites that you think would help our audience here to choose color?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few. There's Adobe Color, which I don't think you have to be an Adobe subscriber to use it. I think it used to be free. There's Adobe Color, and there's a trends tab on there. So it'll show you what's trending in the world, like, so what's trending in graphic design, what's trending in print, what's trending in advertising. And so you can see the kind of color schemes people are using in that space. It's a great idea to get inspiration for different color combos. You can also type in like green or blue and see different color schemes for that. And then there's the Explore tab where you just can see the most popular color schemes on there. There's also Pinterest. I have a whole board for color on my Pinterest boards. And so just looking at what people do in interior design, and also there's lots of color swatches on there, taking colors from nature pictures, and have a look at that, and you can find lots of things on there. And there's also another site called Coolers, which again is very similar to Adobe Color, and it just has different palettes and things on there that you can look at. You can also create your own palettes using that tool as well. So it's really helpful. And then again, the best thing to do as well is just go out in nature, because nature is the best creator of color schemes. So look at flowers, look at the landscape that you live in, or go to your local bookshop and look at front book covers. Or I was thinking today, I saw a cereal box that I particularly like the branding of, and it had a really punchy color scheme. So you can take inspiration from the things that you see in your day-to-day life as well.
I love that. We have a question from David Ball here. What would you say is the mindset at the beginning of creation to kind of start in the right direction for a PowerPoint presentation? So like we're sitting down in front of our computer, staring at that blank PowerPoint screen. What should we be thinking about first?
Step away from the computer. And that's the first thing I would, because I think sometimes when you've got that blank screen, it can actually be a hindrance. Maybe the first thing, and it's a great question, David, thank you very much for asking it. I think also just think about your audience, and why are you presenting to them? What do they need to understand from you? Why should they care about your presentation? And jot down some ideas about the themes and topics that you want to get across. Like maybe what is your big idea or theme that you want to impart to your audience? Start by jotting it down, and maybe sketch some of this out on paper. That's what I used to do. I used to draw like rectangles of the slide and then actually doodle in them, because it's a lot easier to draw out the slide, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It's a lot easier to draw out the slide than it is to start messing about with it in PowerPoint. But before you begin, just think about why your audience is here today to listen to you, and what should they understand from you. And your intro slide is probably the first thing I would get done. Think about your title, give it something catchy, and then start with a very punchy, strong slide to begin with, to really engage and hook your audience into your presentation.
Right. So have your audience in mind as you get started. And I love that tip about just drawing it out and laying it out at the ideas and stuff. Another great question here from our common pro group member, Nya Ho. What is your process and tips on how to filter out the content you have, or filter the content you have and focus on what matters most so that you enhance your story and design? And that's true, right? Sometimes we want to put like 5 different tips, 10 things on the slide. How do we kind of get rid of that clutter and hone in on something?
Yeah, that's an amazing question. Thank you, Nia, for asking it. I think the key thing to remember is just keep it simple. Brevity is best. And when you're going through your deck, there is the you can have a look at the slide sorter, the slide overview, and you can look at your presentation slides kind of like as an overview to see them all together, and just go through it before you do a dry run of your presentation. See how the flow is for you. See if there's any bits that you get stuck on, or you think, this probably doesn't work as well as I thought it did when I was originally putting it together. Maybe lose that section if you feel that it doesn't add value to your audience. And again, every time you look at the slide, just think, is this succinct and clear? Does it bring clarity to my message as a speaker? Does it add value to my audience? And does it help the audience connect to my story and messaging? If it doesn't, and it's not doing that, and it's just a bullet point on there for the sake of helping you to go through the presentation, then lose it or remove it from the slide. Bullet points can sometimes be a bit of a crutch for the presenter to use to jog their memory, and it helps to reduce the need to have bullet points by practicing your presentation and outlining your talk before you go up on stage. So think about that before you finish your deck. Just go through it one more time, look at each slide and think, does this matter to my audience, and are they getting value from that slide, and does it connect with my story?
We have so many great questions. I want to get to this real quick. Oh, David Cause. Yes, cut the fluff for sure. Definitely cut that. But the question I saw here, there from Brian Drake. This is a good question. How do you measure the success of your presentation? What do you think, Illiya?
That's a brilliant question, Brian. Thank you very much. I think, again, for measuring the success, again, you want to feel confident about your presentation. So I would think, if you feel that you've done a good job at the end of your presentation, and you feel that you got lots of questions from the audience, and there was some good audience participation in the Q&A, I think that you can say that that's one way to measure it. Another thing, if it's a pitch deck, for example, and Sam Horn said it best herself, if you get the deal at the end of the deck. So, if you present your pitch and you give your presentation, you tell the investors your story, and you outline the problem and solution about your product, and what you're looking to do, and your marketplace and the value that you're creating, and you get the investment at the end of the deck, then you can measure that and say, well, the pitch deck was part of that process. And there's been many successful examples of that, where the pitch deck has been one of the key reasons for an Uber of this world getting the investment from investors. I
love it. And one of my favorite things on presentations, or especially even as an audience member, when I'm staring up, at a speaker or something, is imagery, right? So let's talk about imagery. What would be some of your kind of like 3 tips for choosing imagery?
Yeah, so the first tip would be to choose an image that relates to your story. So make sure it matches to your story. So again, think about the imagery and think about the topic and the message that you're trying to convey, and look at the imagery. For example, say you're doing a presentation that's very inspiring. Maybe one of the key words for your imagery is inspirational. So think about the types of imagery and think, what does inspiration mean as an image? Maybe it's somebody climbing up a mountain peak. Maybe it's an inspirational vista of a landscape, or maybe it's an astronaut floating in space. Just think about the theme and topic and what story you want to convey, whether the imagery relates to that. That will help your audience connect to what you're speaking about, and be able to resonate with that messaging more clearly.
Awesome. And I want to share with people like some of the imagery you helped me choose. Like, you guys, you have to see this, because I think the way you asked me is, or you walk through it, you describe it. I'll add it to the
I
screen
can
here.
do. I mean, this was one of the tips as well. So this is like tip 2. I mean, it's thinking about creating a mood board before you put your presentation together. So here there's a theme about about a journey. So like people moving through different objects. So thinking about using the color orange here. So orange is the color, and then the theme is the journey. So looking how you move through the different pictures here. So we've got staircases, and this one is more of a tech thing, but again, it's about the flow. So moving from one point to another. And again, this is using the colors purple and kind of that pinkish purple. And then this one is about transformation. So what images to relate to transformation. So the word change is in there. Think about transformation in nature. As I said before, thinking about nature, how that relates. The butterfly is a good example of that. It comes out of the cocoon from a caterpillar and transforms into a butterfly. So think about stuff like that when you're pulling the words together for your presentation, whether it's to inform, to inspire, persuade, and maybe you're doing a transformational presentation. So think about images that transform and change over time.
I love that. So folks, you have some website as well for folks to find gorgeous imagery, right?
Yeah.
Share those with
So
us.
again, some of these you might already have heard of. You know, there's Unsplash, which I am also a contributor on. So you might see some of my imagery on there. So Unsplash can be a good place to find. But a pro tip on there, if you search for like you know, different color schemes like red and black or yellow and black, people have done collections of imagery for like ocean or you know, inspiration, inspiring, uplifting. And have a look at Unsplash collections on there. You can find that in the search tab. People have already created collections of imageries that are a theme for that topic or that word. So you can use them already pre-done and that someone's put together for you. And the other one's Pexels. I really like Pexels. It's got a little bit different style Unsplash in terms of the imagery. Again, they have some great imagery on there. There's a lot of good ones for business as well. They've got some good models and some portraits on there. So I'll check that out. And then the final one is probably my favorite stock site, because I think it has a good range of imagery, as well as the price point is cheaper than iStock and Getty, which are a little bit more expensive for people's budget. Shutterstock has lots and lots of different amazing imagery on there. But again, think about your search term rather than just put business in. Think about energetic business person, or inspirational, uplifting portrait, and then think about the imagery again. Does it relate to the theme and topic of your presentation? Will it connect? Will it help you to connect with your audience?
I love it. Yeah, we see some popular Pexels. A lot of folks use Pexels. So hopefully those are some other sites that will help you folks in the comments. Now, so those were all the items that people can add to the visual side of the presentation, right? Fonts, colors, imagery. I know something that you do is you create presentations for TED speakers. And I want to kind of get to that, because I think I secretly would love to be on a TED stage one day. And I know some folks out there, coaches, consultants, would love to do that as well. Tell us what it was like working with a TED speaker and some of the so-called secrets that you've learned behind TED Talks.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, you know, there's the pressure of being on the TED stage. So you want to make the slides look as good as possible. So it's really just simplifying the presenter's message and allowing the slides to be an aid to the story, and, you know, to support the visuals and the message that's coming across to the audience. It doesn't want to be a hindrance to the speaker. And again, there's lots of things to consider when doing a TED Talk. Again, I mentioned it earlier, but just like the best TED Talks usually tend to stick to one big theme, and you know, how that theme was solved, or what the challenge was, or the journey was. So I would recommend focusing on that. And what is the best story that you can tell an audience? Think about that question and think about what you want to try invoke to the audience. Is there a journey? Is there a set of or an obstacle that you personally overcome to get to where you are? And again, the reason why TED Talks are 18 minutes long, well, that's the suggested length, is that that's a 1 unit of attention span. And there are some talks that overrun to, you know, longer length, but you really want to start with a hook and get your audience engaged from the get-go, and make them sit up and listen. Again, it helps to smile, because when you smile, it makes you look more intelligent, apparently. And use humor as well, if you can, to get a sense of rapport with the audience. But just a caveat on humor: if it has to be natural. I once started my first presentation that I ever did, my first speaking thing, and I try to start with a joke, and it didn't land with the audience, and you could hear a pin drop in the background. So you've got to be careful with humor. If you're, you know, I wouldn't say that I'm naturally funny or anything like that. So
Yeah.
you've got to be careful with humor. If it works and you have that charisma and you are that kind of speaker, then go for it. But it's, you know, you need to think about that before you put your presentation together. And then again, you've got about 7 seconds to make an impression. So it's important to, you know, to carry yourself with confidence. And when we're speaking about that, think about the most popular talks. Again, they had a common theme around them, that not all the speakers just use verbal communication. Non-verbal communication is also important as well. So hand gestures, talking with your hands, and the way you carry yourself on stage. So again, all these things can be very important to a speaker. And one of my favorite TED Talks is a talk by a guy called Bill Strickland. And just think about creativity, being creative, just being different and unique. His talk, he has a live pianist with him playing jazz in the background.
Oh, wow. Huh.
So the jazz just helps to move the story on, and it helps to give it a sense of just kind of like a calming, peaceful theme, but also like a reminiscence. It's like quite a reminiscing story that he tells about his life. And yeah, it just makes him stand out from the norm. Like, it makes that talk different from another speaker's, and helps to differentiate that being a TED Talk from just another TED Talk.
I love it. Creativity wherever we can, right? I love it.
Exactly.
I saw a question. There were several questions around timing of presentations. So obviously you mentioned 18 minutes for TED Talks. What have you kind of seen with the presentations and the presenters that you've worked with? What is a good length for a PowerPoint presentation?
I think 30 minutes is probably like the maximum you want to do if you're doing speaking, a speaking engagement. And again, you can structure that into specific time slots. So I usually break the presentation up into 3 sections. So you want to think about the beginning. So in the first 5 minutes, you really want to hook the audience in, and you know, tell your story, or what, maybe it's a challenge that you had to overcome, and you set the stage for the tone of the presentation. And then in the middle mark, you want to think about asking the audience a question to try and re-engage them. So at the end of maybe the middle topic, maybe plant the seed in the audience's head and think to them, get them to think about, you know, what does this mean to me? Maybe I've been in a similar situation to what you're talking about. A good word to use is imagine if you were in this situation, or imagine if you went and followed the same journey I have. What would it feel like to you, or can you relate to this? And that just helps to re-engage the audience as well. And then at the end, you want to think about your presentation. You know, a lot of people finish the presentation just with thank you, you know, thanks for coming, bye, see you later. Think about the end slide. What's your call to action? What action do you want the audience to take next? Do you want them to connect with you? Do you want them to check out your ebook? Do you want them to follow up with you after the speaking or workshop? You just got to think about kind of what message you want to impart to the audience, and you could even leave them with a question to you know, let them think about that as they go about their day.
Wow. So many things to think about. I hope this is what is resonating with you all in the comments. What is one tip that has stuck out with you guys? Drop it in the comments so we can kind of reiterate some of these things, because there's so much good advice that's happening here, Illiya. I do want to get to kind of like you have like kind of like 3 ways to structure PowerPoint
Yeah.
presentations, right? Let's go through that.
Yeah, so if you think about like just in day-to-day life, think about a movie. So, in a movie, there's always that, sometimes there's a hero or there's the main protagonist, and they go through a journey through the film. They've got some challenges and obstacles they've got to overcome. And as they progress through the film, they interact with different characters, the story is told, and then there's a conclusion, there's an outcome to the story, there's an end point. So just think about that. So again, with storytelling, there's different structures that you can use, particularly in PowerPoint. For example, one of the ones that I like to work on speakers with is the hero and the villain. So when I talk about hero and villain, I'm thinking about video games here. So I'm thinking about like Mario, for example. So when Mario is trying to defeat Bowser, who's the villain, he has to overcome a set of challenges and obstacles to get to the end of his journey to rescue Princess Peach in the castle. So think about your own story that you want to tell. What obstacles did you have to overcome? That is your quest. And then, what was the problems that you faced? That was Bowser, the villain. And then what was the outcome? Did you rescue Princess Peach, or what was the conclusion to the story? So that's one
Real quick,
storytelling method.
Ilya, actually,
Yeah.
so like if it's a presentation about one of us, right? So one of us in the audience or myself, we're doing a presentation. Is the audience the hero? Am I the hero? And then who's the villain? Like, how do we kind of go about crafting something like that?
Yeah, I mean, it can be yourself. I mean, if that's the story, maybe maybe something happened in your life, and you had to overcome something difficult in your life,
Mm.
and there is a story to tell behind that. Maybe the villain is the thing that you overcame, the challenge that you
Ah,
overcame, and the
got it.
outcome, the quest that you got to, the end level complete, so to speak, is what happened at the end.
Yeah, yeah,
So that's one way to do it. You could make it about your audience, but it tends to fit more a personal journey
got it.
more than anything. But you could make it about anything. Just thinking about the
Yeah,
hero could be anything really, to be honest.
awesome. And
Yeah.
then the next tip you had, another way to structure was past,
Yeah.
present, future, right?
Yeah, so this one's a good one for like the tech industry, particularly, like, or if you're talking about like software and things like that. So if you think about a particular thing that's happening, say something that's going on in the tech space, you might talk about, well, here's the past. What happened in the past? Where were we before? Like, what was the issues then? What was the problems there? How was that solved? Now, then you go to the present moment. What does the landscape look like now? How does the audience see that, and how do they understand it? And what would potentially what would potentially happen in the future? What is going to be the outcome in the future? What change will happen, and why would the audience respond to that in terms of the change in the future? Maybe it's a revolutionary new idea, or something that's going to transform or solve those problems that we're currently dealing with in the present moment.
Awesome. And then the final way to structure, what would you say that was?
So the final one is the hook, the meat, and the payoff. Again,
Mm.
with the hook, it's thinking about how you can start your story with either it might be something that's happened to you, or maybe in sort of interesting moment in your life to just introduce your presentation and get the audience to listen. It just might even be a punchy statement or a bold message or topic that you want to set the theme of your presentation. The meat then is the bit you want the audience to understand. So the hook is engage. to try and get your audience to engage. The middle bit is understand. So why should the audience care? What's keeping them up at night? What problems or solutions are you trying to solve or talk about during your presentation? And then the payoff is helping the audience to understand what was the outcome of the presentation, what was the payoff, what was the end benefit of the story or journey that you're telling. So think about that: engage, the hook; meet, understand the core topics of the presentation, and then the payoff is understand what did the audience get, what was the payoff, what was the resolution to the story.
And that's kind of how we did our presentation together, right?
Yeah.
The hook meet. I just want to show you guys real quick, just as a sample of like how, so I had a keynote on transforming your business through live streaming, right? And so we kind of walk through the hook of it, right? Which is basically there's going to be so many viewers of live streams and live videos, and then some of the stats around that, right? And then the why, right? The meat. Why do this at all, right? And well, you go ahead and walk through the rest. I'll just flip through the slides.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's making the topic as clear as possible. Like, again, we're asking questions of the audience there to engage them, like what holds you back, like thinking about live streaming, thinking, here's the challenge. Why would you build your authority? Having a quote to back that up, and then the 3 points that define why you should be doing that. And again, you can break up your presentation by having nice divider slides, but making sure that the points are as succinct as possible. And again, asking questions of your audience or posing questions in your slides to get them to re-engage with your content.
Yeah, I love it. So, folks, I hope that gives you lots of inspiration. That was the 3 ways: was hero versus villain, past, present, and future, and then hook, meet, and payoff. So jot those down. I see also, yes, Patty in there. Who, what, where, when, and why as well. So lots of different formats. And we hope this kind of sparked a lot of ideas for you guys. Things just kind of, it just goes so fast, this this live show, Illiya. I hope those of you in there go out there and implement one thing that you learned today in your presentations. And that's how you can kind of like really take what you've learned today. I feel like this was like a master class, Illiya,
Thank you.
with PowerPoint. Yes.
And I'll just leave this thought for everyone. Remember,
Please.
PowerPoint is a visual communication tool. It isn't a document tool. It isn't Word. So don't be making sliduments, as I've heard Gar Reynolds say before. Think about keeping it simple. And it's a carousel at the end of the day, like the old Kodak, where you just showed image after image on the old sort of slideshow. So just think about that and use it to help you tell your story. It should be an aid to your message and to what you're presenting. It shouldn't be a hindrance to you.
Got it. I just want to get to one quick question. I think a lot of people would have the same question.
Sure.
It was from Clarine. What is the ratio of number of slides to the length, the duration of your presentation? So like if you have a 30-minute presentation, how many slides approximately should we be doing? Is there a good ratio?
Yeah, I mean, there is different ratios. I think you don't have to stick to a specific, length of slides. I mean, the more, the more clear and concise you can be with your slides, the better. But for example, just as an idea, so say if you were speaking for 30 minutes, I would think maybe a minute per slide. So that's 30 slides would be a good format to work on. If you find yourself running through the presentation and you don't have enough time to dwell on that slide, maybe use a lot less slides and give yourself a bit more space between topics.
Right.
So I don't think there's one defined format. You can try and create it to a specific minute by minute basis, but I reckon
Yeah.
it's just best to try it out and
It
see how it feels
depends.
to you. It depends. I've done 100 slide
Yeah.
decks before, and that's how the presenter likes to speak. Lots and lots of
Awesome.
slides, one after another. So it really just depends on the speaker. So make it fit for your presentation style.
So we have a little giveaway that you're going to give to our audience. For those that stayed, I know I'm over my time here, but Illiya, tell people the little giveaway that you have.
Yeah, so I'm working on a PDF at the moment. So everyone who joined the chat today and on the stream, if you connect with me on LinkedIn and just send me a message font, I will send you a PDF. So it's going to have in 5 combinations of different fonts and color schemes. So there's going to be some Windows only fonts on there and some custom fonts that you can use from Google Fonts and others, and some different color schemes. So it's going to be a little like resource guide for people to use. So if you're interested in something like that, let me know and I will send you that for free in a course of a week or so when it's done.
I love it. Thank you. So those of you that want Illiya's free PDF guide on PowerPoint presentations and fonts and imagery, make sure you connect with him and send him a message with the word font in the message. And then you'll get his free PDF. So Illiya, thank you. Thank you so
Thank you,
much
Fanny.
for your time and advice
Welcome.
and tips, all those amazing links. Folks, I hope you took all those notes down and URLs. If not, Anne is going to help us post all those links afterwards. Thank you, Anne. And that's a wrap. So for all of you out there, thank you so much. Continue to shine your light, share your message, share your gifts with the world. And I hope you'll do it through video. Shine your light, everyone. I will see you next week.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye. Take care for now.
Bye.